resources for children. First of all, thank you all for coming. Our program helps parents navigate the Board of Ed process. We also run programs like this one. We help parents understand kids' evaluations, their strengths and weaknesses. We also have a parent engagement center which offers families free counseling, skills and tools for their children. We operate in the greater scope of the Sephardic Before Holy, which is this wonderful building you see around you, but we have a couple of other buildings as well. We run anything from a counseling clinic to senior citizens programs to a food pantry and entitlement and a fertility group and all kinds of wonderful things. A lot of what we do is funded by grants and private donations, so some of it is very specific to the Sephardic community, but a lot of our programs are not. If you hear something here that you think we might be able to help you with, if we're able to take you as clients, we absolutely will. But if our grant doesn't allow it, we will always send you to someone who can help you. Okay, so we are a great resource. You can also, if you have Instagram, follow us on SBH_search. And I'm just going to do a drop of housekeeping, and that is to put your phones on Do Not Disturb, please. Restrooms are right out that door. We have light refreshments in the back. I hope you'll help yourselves. And I want to thank my crew, Sari Towell and Franny Kadosh, who helped me set up today, because I have not done a program in a very long time. And we're really glad that we got this program, and everything got all really set up really nice. It seems like a lot of you guys already know Uri Schneider, but I'm going to tell you about him anyway. He is a speech and language pathologist. He is leading the team at Schneider Speech. Their specialty is stuttering and voice, learning challenges. And I'm listening because every so often families come to us because their child stutters, and we know even in our community there are very few people who specialize. What's really nice, and I did sit through the first program for professionals, and I am not a speech pathologist. It was very nice to hear about the whole overview and this really very interesting and more holistic approach to stuttering. We've not always had great resources to send parents to, so I'm really happy about this. He has a BA in Linguistics, Communication Disorders and Business, also an MA in Speech and Language Pathology from Queens College. He also got smicha from Rabbi Bronspiegel from Beis Medrash Talmud, and he also serves, and you served on the faculty of Riverside Medicine, University of California. That's also very interesting. So without further ado, I would like to invite Uri to please come and share your wisdom with our crowd. Thank you, and thank you very much for coming today. Have a little discussion here.
Okay. It's wow. Seeing some very special people, some very familiar faces and some new faces. Really nice to see you. I think it's an important thing, like a vibe check. You're probably here because you either stutter or know someone who stutters. Is that right? And I'd like to ask everybody to think, like, what do you want to get when you walk out tonight? What were you hoping to get? You know, something that you either want to, you have a question you want to answer, you have a thought you want to kind of verify or validate. What is it you want to get tonight? And I'm hoping that through tonight, and hopefully we'll check in again. At least if we can't deliver 100% of what you were hoping for, hopefully you'll have some traction to take a few steps forward. But I think it's important that everybody just ask yourself. Maybe you're here because someone next to you schlepped you here. Anybody? Maybe. That's the question I like to ask young people when they come to something like this or get on the phone. You know, did you want to be here, or did your parents like handcuff you to come? You know. Friday, the same kid I talked about earlier. He's like, yep, she handcuffed me. I'm like, that's okay, as long as there were no real handcuffs involved. But then there are spouses, you know, that are being very supportive to a spouse, that they want to show up for them, and that can go both ways. And there are speech therapists, and there are family members, and there are people for themselves that are just curious and want to learn about this, about the experience of stuttering. So I do want everyone to take a moment and to ask yourself, if you want to write it down, what's your question for the night, or what's the thing you want to come away with? Okay? Take a moment to think about that. For the person who was handcuffed, it could be, I hope he'll say something that gets that person off my back. You know, could be. Or it could be, something else. So just think, what's your question? There are very few things as profound as stuttering. You know, with the world we're living in, we figured out so many things. We have cars that drive themselves. We have ChatGPT, I can't even begin to describe. But we still don't know exactly what the weather's going to be tomorrow, you know? And stuttering in speech is kind of like that. Like, we know so much about so many different conditions and so many different experiences, and somehow, some way, stuttering is this elusive, confusing enigma. And for people who stutter, and people who love people who stutter, and those of us that try to do our best to help people who stutter, it's very humbling. And it can be challenging. And it can be confusing. And in those times, I think the most real thing we can do is to try to connect with what's most real. So I think, let's start at the beginning. I think everyone here has some connection to the Torah. Yeah? If not, I can make sure to transliterate and make it like totally, oh good, I will make it, you know, Wilmar's here, and Wilmar has been very, very helpful in creating a lot of the things that you're going to see tonight. But in Genesis, in the beginning, it says that God created man. And in creating man, he breathed ruach into man. And that ruach, Funkelus tells us, the commentaries tell us, that was the power of speech. And that's the thing that makes a person, is to be a communicator. Different than the angels, different than the animals, to communicate. It's such a definitional thing to be a communicator. And then we fast forward into Exodus, into Shmos, and we see Moses has this encounter at the burning bush. And God says, listen, I need somebody to take my people out of Egypt. I need somebody to be my shaliach. I need somebody to be the one that's going to speak truth to power. And Moshe has 1,001 reasons why he's not that guy. He's not that guy. And the last reason he says, I don't talk good. Lo ish devarim anochi. And it's so interesting, isn't it, that the definitional thing in Genesis is that God creates man to be a speaking being, a communicator. And here, at the first moment that we see the elevation of the greatest leader and the greatest teacher of all time, Moses, his quintessential character that stands out about him is that he doesn't think he speaks good. And he has some sort of speech challenge. And many people say it was a stutter. It's very interesting. And my father often points out this encounter between God and Moses is like the prototype of speech therapy. Because God says to him, you got this. You have a mission, you have a purpose. Mi sam pela adam. Who gave man the power of speech? It was me. I'm the same one that gave the power of speech. I'm the same one that sometimes creates challenges. And it's through those challenges that people grow, but they're not alone. They're not alone. And God says he's going to be with him. And if you're here with someone that loves you, or you're someone who's showing up for someone else, remember that you're really being and channeling that idea of what Hashem tells, what God tells Moses, you're not alone. And the greatest risk of stuttering is not getting stuck on words. It's feeling disconnected. It's feeling like nobody's listening. Nobody wants to listen. I don't even want to listen to myself. That's the greatest risk. It's important to find ways to get through hard moments. It's important to find ways to say the words that need to be said on a technical level. But we have to remember the definition of man in the beginning is that he's a communicator, and the goal of us as professionals and those of us that are related to people who stutter in any way or care about people who stutter is to make sure that a person's humanity is preserved by making sure they can continue to communicate and to be connected. And the greatest risk is that if the stuttering or the treatment of the stuttering and the response to the stuttering makes a person feel they can't talk, they can't connect, they're alone, nobody's listening, nobody wants to hear them. So the real work is less about ironing out the wrinkles in the speech, and it's more about talk more fear less. And in that, ironically, this is the like counterintuitive part, and this is the enigma, and this is what's frustrating and confusing and humbling. When we make space to talk about hard things in everything, and what Sephardic Bikur Cholim does and all the different things that they do, shedding light on the uncomfortable stuff is actually extremely healing and extremely helpful to make change happen. But if you start with change, and you don't create a little bit of space for uncomfortable conversations and things don't sound so perfect and so beautiful and so appealing, that doesn't go so well. That ends up burying stuff and it gets very messed up. My father, I shared in a recent email, has an analogy of a potato. You take a potato, you put it in a drawer, you close the drawer, you open the drawer tomorrow, it's still a potato. If you stuff the potato in a drawer, you don't open it for 2 years, you open the drawer 2 years later, what you got is not a potato. It's like a 10-eyed monster with things growing out of it all over the place. It's much harder to handle when you stuff it away. So stuttering is a conversation that actually should happen as opposed to being a conversation stopper. It should be a conversation starter. And we're grateful to have amazing people in this room who are among our heroes and our teachers. I'm thinking of course, my father, Dr. Uri Schneider, and our colleagues, Malka Burton here from Flatbush and Batya Tenenbaum from Crown Heights. But also there are people here that I know who stutter. And they teach us the courage that all of us need to have to say what needs to be said. How many of us here could think of a time we had something to say but we held back, whether we stutter or not? Raise your hand. Anybody ever have that? Look at that. And how many of you hold your hand up if you're a person who held back once upon a time, or today, or yesterday, or tomorrow, and you don't stutter? Just, yeah? So look at that. So there's also something about the way that what we say really reveals us. It shows the world what we got on the inside. And all of us are wondering, is the world going to take it? Are they going to listen? Is it going to be okay? Is it good enough? And some of us might worry about our accent. It might sound like, I don't know, like a Syrian accent or a Hispanic accent or whatever, right? We got all kinds of things all of us are worried about. For people who stutter, it's that plus. So if you can relate to any of those things and you can just start to begin to think what it's like for a person who stutters to have those thoughts, it's not as bizarre. You know, if any of us, another analogy my father likes is if you went somewhere and you got mugged, like you got really traumatized, there was one moment where you got taken down with violence and you had to hand over all your possessions, the next time you walk anywhere near that spot, you start tensing up. There's nobody in sight, there's no danger, nobody's holding anything to you, but you get all shaken up, you get all tight. It makes sense. All of us can relate to that. For a person who stutters, that happens when they get close to a word or a situation that might have been a place where it was challenging for them. So for those of us that don't stutter, whether we're professionals, parents, spouses, family members, it is so helpful to just consider what's normal or what's understandable about the way people who stutter are having layers of experiences that are more than just the words getting stuck. And then I think it's really an opportunity, and we'll share a little bit from what we've heard and learned from people who stutter, but for all of us here, to listen to people who stutter, tell us what's helpful. What's helpful? Of course, part of the package is figuring out how to make words come out easier, right? Like it would be nice if all of us could find ways to feel like we know what are the levers that make things go easier, flow better, and what are the things that we have agency over, what are the levers we pull that actually make things get more rough for us. But together with that, what most people will say, when you ask them, let's say someone worked with my father, and let's say they had a very positive experience, let's say. When you ask them decades later, like, what was the biggest agent of change in your life? They'll often say, it was my mother. The way she would listen to me, the way she believed in me. It was my father, the way that he took time, as busy as he was, to give me undivided attention. It was that teacher that as much as I thought I was the worst talker in the class, somehow they kept telling me these messages. I think you say great stuff. I think you're going to be somebody. I think you're going to make it. I think you're going to get through this somehow. So if you're that person, think whether you got that or not, you could be that for someone else. You can give that to someone else. You could be the parent that gives that to your kid. You could be the sibling that gives that. You could be the spouse that gives that. And it doesn't mean you give up on what more could be done, but it's the foundation of really giving a person the faith and the confidence in themselves that they could do something. That was a pre, because I know there's a lot of people in this room that are coming in from different places. and I'm not going to ask everybody to share, but I know that some people are coming in and feeling like this is a chance to revisit something that they've been going through. For some people, this is in a place where they're in a lot of discomfort, a lot of pain, a lot of worry. So I just wanted to set the stage that, like, there are people here that have a lot of strength that they can share with others. There are people here that you're not alone. You're not the only person who's, like, you know, really tense and concerned, and sometimes meeting each other and actually talking, and if we could find a way to connect with each other, that would be really, really powerful. That being said, this is the framework that I want to share with you. Then I'll have my father share some words, and we'll try to really do a little bit of Q&A. So far, so good? Okay? All right. So I think what we want to move away from are simple solutions to complex problems. Yeah? So someone that tells you, oh, you just got to go to this guy, you do this thing, and then bada bing, bada bang, you're set. You know, one size fits all. He's got the solution. He's got the approach. That is just a simple solution. There's no way that that could be the one size fits all for a problem, a challenge as challenging as stuttering, in a way that it presents itself so differently to so many different people. So what you need to be looking for is a custom-made suit. You need to be looking for something that speaks to you, that fits you, that's going to suit your challenges and your needs, and where you're showing up, you know? You go into formal affairs, you go into beach parties, you need something that's going to fit for that situation. Stuttering is a very situational thing. If you are familiar with stuttering, how many of you agree? It shows up differently in different places, in different situations? Yes? So we need to think about the way we respond to it similarly. It's not one thing, set it and forget it always. So if you're a therapist, if you're a parent, if you're a person, you can't be looking for one thing that's going to work the same way in every situation. And you need to be thinking about, what does this person care about? I'm working with a guy, he's at Yale, and I said to him, it's kind of the question I asked you, what do you want to get from tonight? And each person probably had something a little bit different. So I asked him, what do you really want? He said, I want to stop shaking my head. I shake my head a lot when I talk. He has like a really wicked Olympic-sized stutter. And with his stutter, he has like a lot of head movements. And it bothers him. He says he wants to stop moving his head. As my dad often says, great, there's a way to stop. It was just, don't talk, don't stutter. If you don't talk, you won't stutter. If you don't talk, you won't shake your head. He said, no, but I want to talk. I said, great, like where's somewhere that you want to connect? He says, there's this philosopher that I really like, and if he comes and gives a talk, I want to raise my hand and ask a question. And I'm like, cool, like how soon might that happen? He's like, not so soon, but if it happens, I want to be able to do that. I'm like, great, what will be another situation? He's like, oh, if such and such professor has such and such a situation, I want to be the guy that like gives my opinion. Great, awesome. I said, anything else? He's like, yeah, like, if there's a girl and I'm interested, like, I want to be able to say something to her. I'm like, great. Like, how often does that happen? He's like, just yesterday. It happened and I held back and I felt like so, blah. Great. We made a whole list of these things. I said to him, which of those things, because he said the most important to him was that if he met this philosopher that he really worships and idolizes, that he'd be able to ask a question. I said, okay, but which of these would be like the most meaningful to you, the most significant to you? He said, flirting with a girl, you know, being able to say something to a girl. I said, okay. So the point was that we shifted from the goal was to stop shaking his head, and what he actually said in a very sophisticated way, he's like a student of Buber and this thing. He said, unfiltered connection. That's what he said, unfiltered connection. No intermediaries, direct connection, yeah? And he didn't want to have to feel like he has to go through other people or have like a filtered experience. He wants to connect with every essence of who he is, with another person, and connect with the full essence of who they are. That's what he wants. And he made a list of all these things. Another one was, when he's jamming and playing music with new guys in his dorm room, he wants to suggest the next song that they're going to do. But he would hold back because he wasn't sure if he could say it. When he made a list of what was meaningful to him, being able to talk to someone and like start a relationship was like top of the list. Talking to other guys when he's jamming was like the second thing on the list. And then we started going after those things and figuring out how could you do more of that. And when he started doing those things, the speech wasn't perfect, but he was doing the things he wanted. And as he keeps doing the things he wanted, guess what happens to the speech? It gets easier. So it doesn't mean we give up on the speech getting easier. But sometimes the ticket is to go through figuring out what really matters. What do you really want to do? And when you do the things you really want to do and you see it's possible and you have someone who believes in you, it could be a guide, it could be a problem solver, and help you solve your own problems, you start having experiential proof. You could do it, you could make it. But if everybody is so worried, including the person who stutters and including everyone around them, everyone's so worried about it, it creates more disbelief, more doubt, and it just amplifies, I can't, I won't, it's not going to go. This is a framework that we've been using that I've kind of like distilled from my father's work and with the help of our colleagues. The first piece is self-knowledge. A person needs to know about themselves. Needs to know what are their strengths, what are their challenges, what are their goals, how can they go for their goals, not by taking the whole thing in one day, step by step, how to create a plan that's realistic, that's going to move them forward. 2 weeks ago we read about the dream with the ladder. The ladder represents faith. Every step you take on a ladder, as opposed to steps are connected. A ladder's not connected. You put your foot, you try to get the next footing, but you're like floating. You're floating a little bit. You got to have faith to get your foot on the next rung. The work of personal growth and progress takes faith. Self-adjustment is what are the levers I can pull that make things flow easier, and what are the things that maybe I do that actually get myself a little bit more challenged. These include foundational things like sleep, fueling, making sure everything's flowing, like digestive stuff. There's all sorts of things. Hormonal things can impact fluency and stuttering and the way that our speech works. So thinking about self-adjustment, I might not be able to do X, but I could try to get a good night's sleep. I might not be able to do Y. I might not be able to get a good night's sleep, but I can make sure I eat. I might not be able to do this, but I could also be more forgiving of myself if I'm going through a time of hormonal shifts. Self-acceptance is learning how to be comfortable in our own skin. Just by a show of hands, how many perfect people do we have? Yeah, shalom, great. So, shalom, shalom, But there's nobody who says they're perfect. Everybody's got some crack. Everybody's got something. We're all perfectly imperfect. And the human experience is like how you get comfortable enough, never comfortable always, everywhere, all the time, comfortable enough in being imperfect and getting out there and doing what we're meant to do anyway. So for people who stutter, a big part of the work is also working on speech mechanic type stuff, but also getting comfortable with that thing that's not the same as everyone else. And the last part here is self-advocacy, learning how to bring that openness, not just in the comfort that I have with myself, but being able to talk about it with other people, being able to be comfortable and have open conversations with people. So sometimes that means if you're going into an interview, or you're going to give a shiur, or you're going to have a phone call, or you're going to go on a date, like just putting it out front. There's a story that I love to tell from my father. In my version, my father has a little different version, but basically I'll take the creative license with my father's permission. Is this 18-year-old boy, 19-year-old boy, Maishi, comes down from Rockland County, comes down to the Bronx to see my dad. It was after Passover, they had a break, and the parents say, Dr. Phil, do you think he's ready? And they said, ready for what? And they said, ready for shidduchim. My father said, I don't know, I'm not a shadchan. I'm a speech therapist. And he says, well, I don't know, why don't you ask Maishi? Maishi, do you feel ready? So Maishi says, I feel ready enough. My friends also feel ready, but also not ready. It's not a total ready, it's a mixed feeling, it's a ready enough. So my father said, they said, no, but you don't understand, Dr. Schneider. In our community, we got to make sure that everything's before, because they're very picky, and there's this great girl, and this girl, she is so picky. They say about this girl, it's as if she's waiting for Moshe Rabbeinu to come down from Mount Sinai himself and scoop her up. My dad says, I don't know, Moshe Rabbeinu, Mount Sinai, you got Moshe over here. Moshe Rabbeinu has a stutter, and Moshe has a stutter. Sounds like a shidduch. Sounds great. So they said, no, you don't understand. This is how it goes. There's going to be this meeting. They're going to have a very opportune moment to meet each other and see if it clicks, but we just want to make sure that it's set up for success, that it's going to go well. So my father said this crazy idea, I don't know, Maishi, would you want to marry somebody that you have to hide something about yourself? Would you want to have a marriage like that? He said, no. Do you stutter all the time? Is that everything about who you are? Is that all you are? No. So So maybe crazy idea, you go in and say to the girl, say to this princess, say to her, you know, this is how I talk. It's a thing, you know. I'm happy to talk about it and tell you what's up. It's not here, and it's not here. I'm ready to be a great husband. I'm ready to be devoted. I'm ready to be thoughtful. I'm ready to be sensitive. I'm ready to earn, to learn. You name it. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, then go on with the date. Crazy idea. So Moshe and his parents thought, crazy idea, not such a bad idea. Go home. That Thursday, Friday, my father gets a voicemail for the first time. This boy had never left a voicemail before. Dr. Schneider, Mazel Tov, you're invited to the engagement party. A few weeks later, it comes back, and my father says, you know, how'd it go? What happened? So he said, when I told her that, she seemed to be so relieved. She seemed to be so attracted. She said, every guy I met, they were so stiff. They were so plastic. They were so, everything was like so, I knew there was something, but I didn't know what it was. You came in, you put it on the table, and we could get on with things. And I knew what I was dealing with. And it was such a relief that I knew what I was dealing with. The other ones, they looked so perfect, I couldn't figure out what's going to happen, what's going to crack. That's the ability to do self-advocacy and to speak about it and to put it on the table, and sometimes that's what creates intimacy. When you can put it out there, so whether it's with teachers, whether it's with dating, whether it's with friends, sometimes it's about just like putting it out there and letting them know what it is and what it's not. It's not a problem here. It's not a problem here. It's here. You know, what's your problem? You know, I mean, that's one way to go. Or like, what are you good at? You know, there are lots of ways you could frame it, but the key is to create connection and to transcend the stuttering, to not let this thing become an obstacle or this elephant in the room. Let people know what's up, and it can be completely disarmed. Yeah? Or, if we dance around it and we don't talk about it, it can become like a Berlin Wall. It can become a Berlin Wall, and it can be like an albatross for somebody their whole life. But they feel they're not going to take any chances because there's no way the world is going to listen to them. So these are the 4 things. And then I would ask everyone here, you can ask yourself, this is what I was saying before about a custom-made suit. The way that we work is to think about each of these things. What's your profile for the person you care about? What's the profile? 1 to 10, how much does this person know about themselves? If I asked all of you, 1 to 10, can you identify what are you really good at? What are your gifts? What are your strengths? What comes easy to you? What are the things that are hard for you? What are the things that are challenging for you? Could be stuttering, could be something else. What are the ways that you can actually take steps forward so that these things don't hold you back? So if I asked everyone here, you don't have to answer the question, but ask yourself, 1 to 10, think of that number, okay? Got that number? It's going to be like a mentalist exercise here. Next would be self-adjustment. Whatever your thing is, if it's stuttering, if it's something else, 1 to 10, how well do you know the things that you can do to make it easier for you to perform, to do things, to get things done, to make it easier, to get more flow, versus like, I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. Every day is another chance. I just roll the dice and see what happens. 1 to 10, how much do you know about self-adjustment, what you can do to make shifts? Everyone got that number? How many people here is the number the same for those 2? Did you come up with the same number? Different numbers? Did you have different numbers? Most of them. The third one would be self-acceptance. How comfortable are you in your own skin? How comfortable are you showing up as you? 1 to 10. 10 would be super comfortable. I show up as I am, no shame, no hiding. Versus a 1 would be either I'm completely jittery on the inside, I'm totally shaking, I'm totally like itching in my own skin. I hate the way I look, I hate the way I present. It's unbearable to me. And I spend a lot of time hiding and shaming, or I find ways to show up. It's not a 10, but more and more places in my life I'm able to show up. Come up with your number on that. And the last will be self-advocacy. How much am I able to find people in my life? Not everybody the same, but do I talk about it with people? Do I let people know who matter to me, whether it's a teacher, a friend, a mentor, a therapist, a sibling, whoever it is, am I able to open up about it and have a number for that 1 to 10? This is a way that we take the temperature of what is the profile of the person. It's kind of like taking the measurements for the suit. And then we try to find ways to help in each of these areas. So if I'll leave you with that and then we'll transition to my father, I would ask you to think about whatever you came in thinking about, what do you already have in each of these areas? So who here feels strongest of all of them? Your strength is in self-knowledge. You have a good sense of yourself and of what your good strengths are, weaknesses, what the challenge is, what the nature of stuttering is. How many people felt that was their strongest of the four? Awesome. Awesome. A few people. Self-adjustment. How many people feel here that was the one that had the highest number? I know the mechanics. The mechanics, the levers, like performance, that's my strength of all these four. There might be somebody. Great. The next will be self-acceptance. I might not, the other ones, I have something, my strongest thing is self-acceptance, being comfortable in my own skin. Wonderful. See how different people are. And the last one would be being able to be open with people. It doesn't mean all the time everywhere, but being open with people, being straight with people, letting them know what's up. That's often the hardest one. Nobody raised their hand on that one. But my point is that even in this room, and there are a lot of people that didn't raise their hands, you're normal. People that raise their hands have a lot of courage. But the people that raise their hands show the differences between these four. So there are ways that we can work on these different things, but I think if I just give you this, it's like a dashboard to think about yourself. Instead of thinking of stuttering as this scary, confusing, untouchable, this begins to give you a feeling of, okay, what are the things I'm already stronger in? What are the things I need to get better at? And there's help. We have ebooks and videos and lots of podcasts. There's a podcast, Transcending Stuttering, if you've never heard it, with all sorts of amazing people, researchers, people who stutter. But listening to many people's stories gives you more of the truth. And again, in such a confusing condition, the key here, I think, is figuring out what's the truth. The truth is people want to connect, people want to communicate, people want to be heard. So the greatest way to help people talk is to have people who listen. So if you want to get someone else to be able to talk more, give them more listening. And if you're someone who's waiting to listen to someone else, let them know that you want to hear from them. Let them know. Telling them, I want to hear you. Whatever works, whenever works, however works. If you want to draw a picture, if you want to write a letter, but what you say matters. I'm listening. If it's not now, I'm still listening tomorrow. Those are the messages people need to hear. And for people who are stuttering, you should know that there are ways to learn self-adjustment. There are levers. It's not a complete black box. There are ways that can help different people. Different people stutter differently. There's no one-size-fits-all, but there are ways that you can think about what, for some people, sleep is super important. We were at an expo, and I'll finish with this, we were at an expo in Lakewood. A woman came up to us, a Hasidic woman from Monsey. She says, oh my gosh, I gotta tell you a story. I brought my daughter to your father, 20 years ago. Right now, she's leading a team meeting at her work. She still has a little bit of a stutter. She has to think about it sometimes. She has to do things about it. She has to do self-adjustment. But you know what the biggest thing is? When it gets really ramped up, she knows she needs to take a nap. She knows she needs to look at her sleep. So for different people, it could be the mechanics of how you talk. It could also be what are those foundational things that stuttering becomes a light on the dashboard. In other words, of Dan Greenwald. Like it's an indicator. Maybe something like in me, whether it's my feeling safe with this person, whether it's feeling rested, whether it's feeling fed. These are things you could think about, and those are open variables that we could do things about. And of course, speech mechanics are also an open variable. So with that, I hope that gives some insight at a dashboard. And now for the real treat, the main dish, my father, Dr. Phil. And then we'll take some questions.
There's a button.
Hello. I don't know what you're thinking or what you're needing, so how could I possibly know what to say? Maybe, sir, I've been working and fascinated by this strange condition where people who know what they want to say and want to say it get stuck. I've been dealing with this for 53 years with over 2,000 people, and I have learned that I don't know what somebody else needs or wants. So I think the best thing to do if you want to help somebody else is ask them and spend some time listening and trying to sort it out. So would anybody like to ask a question? Thank you.
I don't know if there's an easy answer to this, but I have a son who stutters, you know, on occasion. I don't know what causes it or doesn't cause it, but what am I supposed to do as the mother? And he gets stuck, and I'm trying to be patient and loving and caring, and I want to hear what he has to say, but it's just, you know, he keeps getting more and more stuck. What am I supposed to do?
I tried to remember the words you just said. I want to hear what he has to say. I'm patient and loving. I think those were words. In other words,
I think I'm trying to.
I'm striving to listen and to love and to hear and to care. If you ended right there, you have the answer to your question.
But like the tension is building up in him. So,
And what about in you?
and in me also.
Right.
But I don't.
What's your tension?
And I'm sitting and waiting for him to say.
If you were to wait for an hour, would you get to hear what he had to say?
Probably.
Probably. That would be an incredible gift. It's the gift that we often call psychotherapy. You go and you speak, you pour your guts out to a therapist, and you come home to your spouse, your soulmate, and they say, well, what did the therapist say? Well, he just listened, and he went, So when a person has to deal with interruptions in their speech that are involuntary, they need more time for the person to listen. So good listening is good loving. And if you had a person in your house who was a relative who didn't speak the language that you speak, but they were visiting for a week, you know you'd have to spend more time listening to be able to communicate with them. So your son right now needs longer listening time. If you perceive that he's drowning in a pool and you need to jump in to rescue him, you're doing it because you want to save his life. And that's a very normal feeling for a parent who loves a child. But the lesson that might be experienced by the child is, you're not going to give me time to finish what I have to say, and then as I go into my adult life, I'm going to carry that thought with me that people are not going to wait. And so if I have to be afraid, if I get stuck, they'll take the microphone away from me and somebody else will get to speak. But if you do the opposite, which is you follow your own advice that you came out of your mouth, and you give all the time that's needed, and you can never give all the time that's needed, but if you really work by the rules that you put out there, he will grow up knowing that people will listen and people care about what he has to say. If you comment only on the speech interruption, you notice you're turning away, you notice you're getting stuck, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that, the speech teacher told me to tell you this, then he's going to learn that when he speaks to you, instead of listening to him, you're going to be analyzing him and critiquing him and telling him what to do. But basically you've changed the topic. He's telling you about something that happened in his life that he wants to share with his mother. What a gift. And then we, as the parents, sometimes feel it's our job to fix them. And so we respond out of love and out of panic, some kind of combination of the two, that to tell them to do something differently. Hey, but I wasn't talking to you about that. Didn't you hear what I was talking about? I was talking about this. So your choice is to listen or to not listen. But it does take more time. And there's one more thing you can do. I spoke in the last gathering about it, which is you can say to your son after he finishes whatever it is, thank you. Thank you so much for telling me about your life. Because you can't know your son by looking at him. You don't know anything about your son by looking at the shape of his nose. But when he opens his mouth and tells you how he feels and what he thinks, you get to really meet the real person. The real person's not just a physical shell, it's the neshama, it's the thoughts and feelings. So for this child, and if you have a child with a food allergy, you change the way you cook. So stuttering is a speech allergy. You get stuck, you have a little irritability with your motor system in talking. So it does take more time, and it's work. I hope that's something, and you can, of course, get back and we can talk more. Yeah.
Hi. I could use some tips on how to make like a positive speaking environment for my daughter when she's constantly cut off like by her brother and feels uncomfortable.
How old is your daughter?
3.
3. How old is her brother?
5.
5. And this takes place all around in your home environment.
Yes.
I have thoughts, but I'm sorting through what might be the most, something that might be useful to you. Well, do you think teaching your kids values is important in your life as a mother?
Of course.
So what would be a value you'd like your kids to grow up with from their experience growing up in your home? One value. I would suggest maybe the value is how important the word Shema. It's a word that comes up in a very prominent prayer in the Jewish world. It's not exclusive to Jewish culture, but it means it's the first word of a very important prayer. It means listen. Listening is good loving. So what if when the kids sit down at the table and a 3-year-old, you can't give a big lecture, you say, we're going to do something very special here at the table. We're going to take a moment to listen to each of us. Who would like to say what they want first? And again, I'm trying to visualize your children. But you want to teach them about listening. So you don't do it by a lecture. One thing I've done in some families is you get a little sand timer. It's like 15 seconds or 30 seconds. It gets passed. You can pass it to the next kid if you don't want to talk, or you can talk until the sand is out. But I didn't finish. Would you like another turn when everybody else has taken their turn? Well, I don't want to listen to this. Go. You can go in the other room, come back when it's your turn. So you start to build in how am I going to teach my children the value of listening and taking turns, because listening is giving your life to another person. You stop your own wheels and you completely become a vessel to discover and to receive from this other person. So you start finding ways to teach about that, whether it's storybooks that you create or find, or the way you conduct things at the table, because maybe the two adults, maybe there's another parenting figure, maybe there's another adult there, and oh, Daddy, I wasn't finished yet. I want to hear what you have to say, but I need to finish what I'm saying. Could I take another moment to finish? Oh, of course, I'm sorry I interrupted you. So you can role play as adults, stepping on each other's toes. All of us do that. I'm in my marriage for over 50 years, thank God, and the toughest part is for me to learn to listen. Good listening doesn't mean you agree, doesn't even mean you understand. It just means I want to understand. And so you can begin thinking about how you would teach those skills in a way that becomes experiential in your home. So when they picture their table, their table, as a 5-year-old, as a 6-year-old, as a 3-year-old, when they're 20 and 30, they remember that they learned the power of listening. And you can pick my brain more on that at some point.
What about friends or classmates that are teasing or taunting your child?
What age is your child?
She's 12.
So this is around either before or at or a little bit after, around adolescence, puberty.
Mm-hmm. It's gotten much worse now.
Yeah, but this is the age when people start to compare each other to each other and try to put other people down. So that kind of stuff doesn't happen in very young children. You have to get to a certain level of maturation to understand meanness. So what would you like to teach your child
I
about
want her
that?
to feel that what she's going through is okay.
Is okay in what sense?
Meaning that it's a struggle she's having now, but it doesn't define her, but not to pay attention to what other people say about her.
And has
It's hard.
that been enough for her?
Is that enough for her? Not necessarily, but she's strong enough to feel that it's not going to define her. What I'm also noticing is that it comes in cycles. I think also what I'm hearing now is that she might not be getting enough sleep, because I see that it got worse the last time.
Let's stay with the first question, which is how to deal with a child's the topic, the generic name for this is being bullied. And at this point in history and culture, could you open up a water for me? There's a lot of literature and books out there about how to deal with bullying. So there are a couple of messages that I would like to share with your daughter, which is what that child said and did is mean-spirited, and that really hurts. So she gets validated, not like, don't worry about it, you'll be fine, you're strong. But, that stinks, and that's painful, and that's not fair, it's not nice, and it's not right. And if it continues, we're going to find a way for us adults to deal with it in an adult way, because you shouldn't have to go to school worrying that people are going to do that. Did you wanted to jump in? Yeah, sure.
Just on the,
I know you.
yeah, you go, Mike. But as a dad, so I had to deal with this. So, and my kid doesn't stutter. So that's the other thing. Is like it's broader than stuttering. You know, we can have kids that don't stutter that can go through bullying, or we could go through bullying. It can happen in an office.
Happens always,
Yeah, it's more of a symptom of what the dynamics are in the class than it is your daughter, and I think that's important somehow to transmit to your daughter. I have a strong feeling about bullying that it's not the kid who's getting bullied's responsibility to shoulder the problem to be solved. You know, it's a symptom of a class or a culture that needs addressing. And so I would encourage as a parent that you be all the things that my father said, to signal to your daughters you're probably already doing, but also not to leave your child to have to fend that off by themselves. I think a very concrete way that I've seen helpful, and I'm happy to share with you the email that I wrote to my son's school. But basically, you know, if you can find, if the teacher is someone you could talk to, then that's the best. If they're not responsive, then I'm happy to share an email that I wrote with you. But basically to say, look, it's teacher's responsibility and it's the principal's responsibility to create a safe space for all the children. And no children should be going to school feeling like it's not a safe place and there are no adults looking out for them. And so you create a zero bullying environment, which sounds like, you know, pie in the sky. But what you can do, what I helped the school do was, and I learned this from others, and I saw it replicated in all sorts of schools, you don't have the kids reporting on who did what. But if the teacher, every week, at the end of the week, if the class develops their own Bill of Rights or their own rules for the class of how we treat each other, and at the end of the week there's a little checklist, and anonymously all the children just check off, did you see any of this happening in the class this week? Did you see any of this happening? You activate all the children to become reporters, and you also give every child the feeling that there's no time that they're not being watched. They're always seen, and their actions matter. And now you activate all the bystanders, and you also put all the bullies on notice that there's never going to be a time that they're around the corner from the eyes of the adults. And in doing so, the teacher will know and have a pulse if this is happening and perseverating, or if it's been extinguished. And for your daughter to know that that's happening and to pursue that, I think is a very practical, powerful thing. And the second message I heard from people who've gone through and grown out of this is that many people go through bullying and come out okay. And the messages that parents give and the teachers give and the way they experience it can make all the difference. So one formulation was to tell the kid, you know, in life, there are a lot of jerks. Thank God, not everyone's a jerk. So look for the people and connect with the people that make you feel good and know there are going to be people in your life this year, in school, in the community, in your job, in your life, whatever, that are not so great and kind of toxic, and learning how to deal and navigate that is important, but know that not everyone in the world is like that. Not every place is like that, and you deserve to be in a place where you don't go through that every day.
I think it's an extremely important topic, and it happens a lot. And if parents step up and go to the school, whether you're successful or not in stopping that bully, your kid knows that you take them seriously and you're here to defend and protect them. There was a saying I heard growing up in the world I grew up in, sticks and stones will break your bones and names will never harm you. It's actually the reverse. When bones break and heal, they heal stronger than they were before. But name calling can last a lifetime. The pain that you experience, and then bullying, by the way, is always done in public because it has to do with creating shame. And it's very hard to fight a bully, particularly if you happen to be someone who has trouble speaking. You can't come out with some clever line. And I did hear, I spent time with kids creating clever lines, but it doesn't mean they can always deliver them. And I was sitting with a family when you would not have expected this, but this kid was in front of his parents, a 10-year-old, explaining about the pain that he experienced when some kid had been taunting him repeatedly. And I said to him, so what did you do? And he said, I punched him in the face. His parents fell off the chair because they would never expected or would have encouraged that. I said, and then what happened? He said, his nose started to bleed. I said, and then what happened? He said, I don't know. He has never come around next to me anymore. So I didn't go like, yeah, punch him again. You know, I didn't like. I thought, okay.
It worked.
But inaction and telling the kid just forget about it, it's nothing and then so forth, it invalidates the child's experience of having been hurt, and it says you're not going to defend them, and so they feel more vulnerable, and the bully wins. And the other thing, if the child's old enough and understanding it, you explain, you know, there are all different challenges in the world. Your challenge is sometimes you get a little stuck on a word. Their challenge is that they feel sad, and because of that they're mean and try to make other people sad. And it's a very complex problem they have. It probably has something to do with their family and love that they could not receive. And so I had one kid say, he was able to muster it, stuttering and all. I says, you know, yeah, I stutter, but I'm not mean. And I'm going to talk great someday, and you're going to still be mean. So thanks for the question, it's important. Yes, Uri.
Yeah, I had an idea. There's someone here who taught me something, and I think there's people here that could teach us more. So maybe we could all listen. There's someone here that I met with Malka some years ago, and this person also had a very strong stutter, and he said at the time, this unbelievable idea. He said, you know, for me, saying unkind words or saying words that shouldn't be spoken or lashon hara, it's not a thing. Because it's so hard for me to get my words out, so that's like not a thing for me. And it made me realize, like, yeah, with me, like, the words come easy, so I have the challenge to figure out when to filter what I say. For this person, he filters very well, because he has to decide when is it worth it, what's worth saying, what's worth being said. And I wanted to give an opportunity to ask, maybe, to break the ice on this, that maybe there are people here. It could be there's a parent here that's learned something in their experience. Maybe there's someone here who stutters, who could offer or share a lesson, some wisdom, something that's been helpful. So if there's a parent, a loved one, a person who stutters that could share with some of the people here, and I promise you, whatever you think you have is worth a lot to a lot of people here, much more than anything I could say, and maybe even more. So I found yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I'd say that, yeah, like I definitely watch the things I say a lot more since I do have one. Like, since it's harder for me to say things, I'm very like aware of the things I say.
Thank you so much. Did you raise your hand?
I tell my daughter, because sometimes she stutters, so I tell her, like, first think about what you want to say in your head and then say it. And I noticed her doing that even like with homework, like with Hebrew, like first she says it in her head and then she says it out loud. And I think that helps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just tell my daughter who stutters that she has the nicest friends, 'cause, like, people are willing to listen to her. Always so nice, and she's so lucky. She's a group of friends. That are really
So
nice.
lucky that it's friends like that. That's beautiful. And that speaks to seeing her and seeing not just her stutter. That's beautiful. Other comments or things or lessons that people have found helpful? Could be someone who stutters, or it could be something that was unhelpful. That's okay. I know there's someone that I know who found it very helpful to meet other people, to be connected with other people that are a few years ahead of them, to kind of like see, oh, like I'm just this age, and I know what it's like to be going through what I'm going through, but to meet other people that are going through, that went through this, and now they're on a few years ahead of me, for them that was very helpful. Wonder if someone here has another nugget they would want to share.
I don't have any advice or anything, but I'm just
Please.
going to say something out loud that I've been thinking about, and probably a lot of people think of this also. I have a stutter. It's not very strong, but it does come out often. And I'm just thinking out loud. Everyone has something about them that's not perfect, and some people have something about them that's very different than other people, and it shows. And like, I don't know, someone can have like a, I don't know, I don't want to say anything, but someone can have something outwardly that's different from everyone else.
Someone doesn't have legs.
Yeah, okay, that could be one. So when I see people like that sometimes, I think that person is probably not ashamed of what that thing that they have. Everyone can see it, but they're probably not ashamed. And when you stutter as an adult, I'm not talking about being bullied, but when you stutter as an adult, so I'm thinking, no one is going to say anything to me. Everyone is an adult. They're nice people that I'm with, like if I'm in shul. No one's going to say anything. What am I so self-conscious about? And that's what I can't figure out. It's so yeah, I know it's different than everyone else. But what is going to happen? No one's going to do or say anything, and yet I'm still thinking, why? What is so? I can't think of the word, but what is it about stuttering that makes a person so self-conscious, as opposed to any other things that might be wrong with someone? That's it. I'm just thinking aloud. That's all.
Thank you so much. I'd say my father in the first documentary film. How many of you have seen the movie, Transcending Stuttering? So you go to schneiderspeech.com/movies. You see, there's a quote there from Eleanor Roosevelt, I think. Courage. No, that's not. That's the Eleanor Roosevelt. It's a different quote. No one can insult you without your permission. But the quote I wanted was, courage is not the absence of fear, right? So I'm thinking of what you're saying. There isn't this true threat from others. And you start to realize, you know what? I'm wanting to engage. I'm wanting to do something here. And I'm the only one holding myself back. So I wonder how I could dial up, if I really want to do this, how could I really connect to what I really want to do to get through that fear, which is there. It's not that you eliminate the fear, but you just amp up and lean into the courage to override it and to do the thing that's most meaningful. That's very, very insightful. Yep.
I think it's great. Your point is interesting and, to me, profound and very much somewhat universal in the stuttering condition. If you don't speak, nobody will know. You don't have any risk. Nobody will know that you have this, whatever it is. And so it can be hidden. If you don't have limbs, it can't be hidden. So, and it's, the other part, there's another piece to this, which is that the person who does not have limbs, you meet him today, he doesn't have limbs, tomorrow he does, and then for a week he doesn't, and then the next time he shows up with him, you'd be like, wait a minute. Stuttering is like that. It's very confusing because almost everyone who stutters also speaks normally. Stuttering, and that's why it's so hard that's why we don't have a causation model. That's why all the brain studies haven't answered the questions yet, because the person who has these interruptions also has many experiences, and it varies across the board of people who stutter. But most people who stutter have much normalcy. So it's like, what do you mean you can't tell me your name? I just saw you tell your name to that person. You said it yesterday, fine. So why can't you say it today, fine? So it's very confusing to the person who has it and to the people who are witnessing it for the first time. So there's something about this condition, and most people assume either it means there's something psychologically wrong with you, that you must be nervous, frightened, so you can't speak, or maybe your thoughts are not so clear to yourself. So the two most common naive interpretations, and when someone meets a person who stutters and they didn't expect this, is either there's some kind of psychological thing going on, or there's some kind of cognitive kind of thinking thing going on, and it's neither of those. So it's a strange condition because it's intermittent. And again, people who have this, who live with this, don't really know why it's hard to even come to grip with for those of us who have it. So I think that I shared in the last meeting this evening that I developed a tremor disorder and other kind of movement disorders in my late 60s. And I immediately found myself having a sense of shame. I didn't want to be seen in front of other people out of control of my body. There's nothing intrinsically shameful about my hand shaking, but when I spill a glass at the table and it's a social event, or I drop dishes while I'm washing them, or all kinds of other stuff, I feel diminished. I feel like I'm not the man that I was. I mean, I've acquired this thing, but I don't want people to see it. And that didn't take time to develop. Nobody ever made fun of me. Nobody ever commented. But I immediately found that I didn't want to go to public things like the synagogue or group things. I found myself keeping my hand in my pocket. I felt the need to hide this because I felt like less. And there are other things that go on. It's like, you know, what does it mean if you want to open your mouth and saliva pours out? And then your shirt gets wet. So maybe I don't want to open my mouth at the table because maybe that's going to happen. It didn't happen for 3 weeks, but it did happen 3 weeks ago. And it's intermittent. I don't know when it's going to happen and when it's not going to happen. But it's a sense of being out of control. I think this is the closest I can get to it. The sense that you're out of control of your body. And the thing about this out of controlness with stuttering is it only happens when you're talking to somebody else. When a person speaks alone in a room by themselves, most people who have this stuttering thing don't have it, or have it much less. So you're always going to be witnessed having this experience. And I think that leads to a feeling that, what are people going to think about me? And I'm different, and maybe they're thinking this, and maybe they're... So I think there's a very powerful natural course to feel a sense of there's something wrong with me and people will think somewhat less of me.